I grew up in a house with a mother who valued education. I learned to challenge authority. I would be that little kid that goes, "But why?" She'd say that famous line, "Because I said so." And "because I said so" never sat well with me.
Minneapolis, you're so many things to me.
I grew up in Minnesota. I'm the son of a Jewish mother. And what does a Jewish mother want for her kid, at least back in the 70s? Was for them to be a doctor or a lawyer. Applied to medical school, got into the University of Minnesota. The second 2 years are all clinical rotations. I was up at 4 in the morning catching a baby, and I thought this was the coolest thing. So I applied to residency programs, matched at Cedars-Sinai Medical Center in Los Angeles. We had an affiliation with LA County USC Women's Hospital, which at that time was the busiest hospital in the United States as far as maternity care goes. They did approximately 22,000 births a year there, which is about 65 babies a day. In those days, things like breeches and twins were considered just variations of normal. I got very skilled in those sorts of things. For the first 5 to 10 years in practice, I was still a very medicalized doctor until I began to learn more from the midwives. I would sit in the lounge with the midwives. I'd ask them questions, and then they started asking me questions. Like, why are you putting her in lithotomy position, which is where you're on your back with your legs in stirrups, and covering her with blue drapes and washing off her bottom with betadine? It's a sterile solution. And why are you cutting the cord immediately? Why are you showing this woman this beautiful thing she created and then walking it across the room and setting it down in the warmer? And I'm looking at that and I'm going, I don't know. Why am I doing that? I guess I'm doing that because that's the way it's done, which is not a very good answer. I decided I was going to form a collaborative practice with hospital-based midwives. We had great results. We had a C-section rate of about 7%, when the average at that hospital in the mid-90s was about 27%. You'd think that the hospital and people around there would be delighted that we did that, but they weren't, because we were different, and different makes people uncomfortable. They began to get upset with us because our results were making them look bad. I was doing breech deliveries, they were sectioning all breeches. If a woman called at night and said she broke her bag of waters, I'd ask her, is the fluid clear? Are you bleeding? Is the baby moving? I'd say, sure, great, go back to bed. They would tell the woman to come right into the hospital and they would start them on Pitocin right away. A lot of our patients did not want epidurals, yet the anesthesiologist had to be there at the hospital making no money because our patients weren't using their services. Pediatricians didn't like us because a lot of our moms did not want hepatitis vaccine or vitamin K or the erythromycin I goop. The longer the patient stayed in the hospital, the more revenue it generated. The medical field looks at preventing liability and generating revenue. Their mission was different than my mission. My mission as a solo practitioner and my fiduciary duty was to my client. The hospitals is completely different.
Hi, my name is Stuart Fishbein. I'm a OB-GYN from Southern California. If hospitals make 2 to 2.5 times as much money doing cesarean sections as they do vaginal births, and if the hospital that I work in has mandated that every C-section baby has to be admitted to the NICU for 4 hours for observation, cash register, if you know what I'm saying, how would you ever convince a hospital to allow VBACs again?
I guess we can't close your hospital, right? That's not one of the options.
They decided that they were going to ban VBAC, which is vaginal birth after cesarean. Then they banned the midwives from the local hospital. Then they were going to ban breech delivery. And in June of 2010, I had done 3 breech deliveries, all of them fine. And then I got a letter from the chairman of our department saying that if I did another one, they were going to suspend me. I had good advisors, and the midwives all told me, Stu, just start doing home births.
You're 8 centimeters.
Nice, Sarah. Yeah, yes.
I started doing home births with midwives. They brought skills that I didn't have, and I brought some skills they didn't have.
Oh, yeah.
You're doing great, Aurora. You got it.
I began to do breeches at home and twins at home. I published 4 papers. I became sort of an icon in the community of Southern California. I was pretty much the only option for women with breeches or twins who didn't want a cesarean section scheduled.
Nuchal cord times 1?
deep breath.
Hang on.
That's it.
It was the best thing that ever happened to me leaving the hospital. Had I not met those midwives 40 years ago, I probably would still be the OB-GYN that's just following the rules and having a 40% C-section rate, 50% of women complaining of obstetrical trauma, inducing a third of all women, having 80% of my patients have epidurals, and having no concern for what's that doing to that baby, that mom, and that mom's future babies.
That's it. Push your baby
Push,
down.
baby.
Push your baby out.
Strong,
Come
Sarah.
on, bad.
Let's go.
Oh my god! Look at how beautiful you are!
Hi, baby.
Nicely done.
We've convinced women in the last 100 years that their bodies cannot give birth without being cared for and managed. That's crazy.
Look at those eyes.
Well, it's my honor and pleasure to be joined right now by Dr. Stu, or Stuart Fishbein.
Thanks, Dale.
It's a pleasure having you here at the HighWire. Of course, you and I go back some time. My executive producer, Jen Sherry, you helped give birth to her breech baby, which is an amazing moment.
At home.
At home. But as we sit here right now, in 2025 in the United States of America, we have some of the worst stats we've ever seen when it comes to childbirth. Record high maternal mortality, especially among African American women. Probably some of the highest day one old baby death rates in the industrialized world. And it's hard, I think, to argue that America has the best medical system anymore if our stats are so bad in that area. So how is it, what's happening? Because we have the biggest hospital systems in the world. We have the best trained doctors, at least this is what we've been told for decades. Why are we getting childbirth so wrong?
There's a big disconnect between the fact that we have big medical systems, big hospitals, all kinds of doctors with all kinds of alphabet numbers behind their name, or alphabet letters behind their name, and the fact that that's going to translate into better outcomes. When you look at this, what we're doing in 2025, you have to take just a look back in history a little bit, and you have to look back, say, 50 years.
Okay.
And 50 years ago, we knew about germ theory, we had antibiotics, we had surgical techniques, so we can't go back 100 years because that's not fair. So let's go back 50 years. 50 years, we had no Society for Maternal Fetal Medicine. We had no high-risk specialist doctors. We had a C-section rate of about 5%.
Okay.
We had rarely anybody getting induced. We had rarely anybody getting an epidural. We had about 1 in 3 women getting an ultrasound once during their pregnancy. And now we have a C-section rate that's about 35%.
Wow.
So that's a 700% increase. We have an induction rate that went from almost none to 1990, about 10%, to now over 30% of women are getting induced. Just think about that for a second, that the medical system that we all want to rely on has decided that over a third of women need to be sectioned, over a third of women need to be induced. 80% of first-time moms have an epidural. And most women have at least 3 ultrasounds, if not more, from this high-risk specialty group called maternal fetal medicine doctors. And yet the rate of cerebral palsy, the rate of neonatal death has not gotten better. If anything, has gotten slightly worse. So if you just take a step out of it, and if you're not stuck inside and you're not involved in the control and the money and all the other stuff, and you look back and you say, we have all this technology and all these interventions and our outcomes are getting worse, any sane person would say, whoa, what are we doing here? Why are we going backwards? And the excuse that you see, like I know in your autism discussion, you say, well, kids are sicker and kids are, and there's other problems going on. And people say, well, women are fatter, women are older. That doesn't account for a 700% rise in cesarean section rate. It doesn't account for 80% of women getting epidurals. There is no consideration in the medicalized birth model for nature's design anymore. It's all become algorithmic, and interventionist. And until we realize that what we're doing isn't working by simply looking at outcomes, nothing's going to change.
Let's take a look at, you broke down several issues there, inducing labor. We've had 2 kids, my wife and I, at home, which was a beautiful experience. But, you know, you look into all the other ways it could happen, and inducing is something that's a big part of this conversation. I'm a natural law guy. Like, I just always think as soon as you start messing with nature, you're now putting yourself in some form of risk. You're trying to make the body do something it's not ready to do or doesn't want to do. For some reason, your body is not going into labor. What is the main, so if we're at 30%, you know, of women are inducing labor, is that because of the executive birth phenomenon where they just want to have this birth at a scheduled time? Or are they being told you're carrying too long? What is the main reason for inducing labor?
It's not right to be blaming women for choosing induction or choosing cesarean as the reason that these things are rising like crazy.
Okay.
Fear permeates my profession. The American College of OB-GYN is an industrial lobby that lobbies for academic obstetricians. And they have a statement in several of their guidelines that say things like this: pregnancy itself is a high-risk condition. If that's the prism by which they're looking at pregnancy, and I agree with you about nature's design, when you mess with Mother Nature, there will always be downstream consequences. You might not recognize them right away, but there will always be something.
Yeah.
And because of fear that permeates the training of medical students and residents, and then subsequently OBs, and because maternal fetal medicine doctors are now controlling the entire profession of obstetrics, where they run the medical schools, they run the organizations, and they profit from the more testing and the more things that they do, the more diagnoses they make, the more labels they dish out to women, the more they can control them. And it's fear that then leads women into being induced for all these things. Maybe a small percentage of women need to be induced. But the idea that 1/3 of women need to be induced, when 30 years ago it was only 10%. So explain to me in simple terms what happened in the last 30 years that made it triple.
Yeah.
If it isn't just iatrogenic, which is where doctors do things that cause these problems themselves. I mean, there's a thing we talk about called the cascade of interventions, which means that a woman is doing perfectly fine, and in her mind, she feels good about her pregnancy, but she goes to her OB's office and she has a test or an ultrasound that they find some little thing that's wrong or maybe not right, but doesn't really mean anything. But now a seed is planted in her head. And so now she starts to worry. And that worry is changing her chemistry. And as we all know, mammals, when they are fearful, they often will not go into labor. It's nature's way of protecting the offspring, and only when it's safe will labor ensue. That way, nature ensures better chance of survival. So a woman is now basting her baby in fear hormones like cortisol and adrenaline instead of dopamine and oxytocin, our love hormones. And as she goes along, so now she's got this thing planted in her head. So now her doctor says, well, let's send you to the MFM. And the MFM does an ultrasound and seems like everything's fine, but maybe the fluid was a little bit low, or maybe they saw a little bit of marking in the heart or something. Again, doesn't mean anything, but they'll say to the woman, you know, I think things are okay, but I want to see you back in 2 weeks. Did the woman hear the words, I think things are okay? Or did all she hear was, I want to see you back in 2 weeks? So now she's worried for 2 more weeks, and the worrying starts to build up, and she's getting pressure from the outside, from family members and other people, and other girlfriends who are telling her things. My doctor said this, my doctor said that. So eventually they succumb to the idea, well, you know, you don't want to end up with a baby that's in the NICU or dead, so let's just induce your labor. Because the medical model doesn't think there's anything wrong with altering nature's design about labor itself. And the fact that babies often signal the mother, and it's a little bit of a mystery of how it works. There's things we understand and don't understand about how labor ensues, but there's a natural way of doing that. There's a hormonal symphony going on between mom and baby, and there's other things that we don't understand, and the baby then triggers labor. Labor goes, the baby has to navigate the process of labor, which is beneficial to the baby later on. Nature wouldn't design it any other way. Right. Baby gets exposed to mother's microbiome. We all know, and especially your listeners know about the microbiome. the medicalized birth model doesn't consider that to be that important. They use antibiotics like water, and babies are born by cesarean section. Babies born in the hospital are often get exposed to the wrong bacteria at the very beginning. They don't think there's any importance to that. They don't think there's a significant importance to delayed cord clamping, or what we call optimal cord clamping, which is essentially no cord clamping. ACOG comes out with these artificial numbers, ACOG's the American College of OB-GYN, saying, well, 60 seconds of delayed cord clamping, because if it goes beyond that, then there could be a problem. Well, why 60 seconds? Why not 2 minutes? Why not a minute and 12 seconds? Why not leave it alone? What other mammal gets its cord cut immediately?
Right.
Some snap when they call it. You've all seen the videos of elephants or giraffes where they fall to the ground and the cord snaps. Babies don't bleed to death.
Yeah.
But if you have had a dog that's had a litter, you don't rush in and cut the cord. And no one ever separates the baby from the mother. And no one ever takes the food and water away from the dog when it's in labor, yet we take food away from women in labor and expect them to do this very difficult, energetic thing for 20 hours with essentially a popsicle. And we interrupt them all the time. No one would interrupt your dog if it was in labor. You would tell the kids to leave the dog alone. You wouldn't have bright lights. You wouldn't make the dog lay in one place. If the dog was uncomfortable, the dog will get up and move. We tell women they need to be in one place because they have to wear the belts, because we have to monitor the baby, which is a whole nother thing that has led to the rising.
The recent headline on that, we got that right here. I guess this is a sign that maybe we're waking up a little bit. New York Times, shockingly, the worst test in medicine is driving America's highest C-section rate. We were just talking before, we started this interview. My son was born 17 years ago. He's 17 years old. We knew, because of talking to people like you, don't put the belt on. As soon as you put the monitoring belt, I forget what the stats are, but you've just increased your risk of a C-section, something like
by a significant amount.
By a significant amount.
The problem is that the medical system that we just talked about doesn't work on individuality. It works on algorithms. And they think algorithms will protect them medical legally. So
that's what I was going to ask you. What is at the heart of this? Is it speed? I hear doctors, they don't get paid for a 10-hour birth anymore than they get paid for a 1-hour birth. So better I just do a C-section and get the hell out of here for my time to be valuable. I don't know, is that true or not?
Yes.
That's true.
Yeah, there are three or four things that drive it. Expediency is one.
Okay.
It's a lot easier to do a C-section at 7:30 in the morning and be out by 8:20 than it is to have a hospital that has a policy that says, with a vaginal birth after cesarean, Dr. Fishbein, you have to be in the hospital the entire time she's laboring. That's our policy.
Okay.
So they make policies that make it hard to offer women individual care. The second is money. Right. So time, money, fear of litigation.
Why is it cheaper to have them in and out quickly? Just the hospital services?
Well, no, it's the hospital makes more money.
Oh, they want more money.
Yes.
So they're charging you for all of these things they're adding onto your bill.
It's basic economics. If you want more of something, you subsidize it. If you want less of something, you tax it. So if we wanted to lower the C-section rate tomorrow, one of the things, there's lots of things involved. We need tort reform and other things like that. But one of the things that you could do is you could change the way we reimburse things. You could pay people for not doing stuff. You could pay more for a vaginal birth than you pay for a cesarean. Takes more skill and more time to do a vaginal birth than a cesarean. But
Which is wild because it's a surgery versus something that
we've always
naturally.
valued surgery higher. Now the doctor, again, to be fair, the doctor's probably not getting paid more, but the doctor's saving time.
Yeah.
The hospital makes 2 to 2.5 times as much money when a woman has a cesarean. And if by chance that cesarean is done early or the baby is having rapid breathing and the baby goes to the newborn intensive care unit, that's a cash cow for the hospital. And interestingly enough, in the last 15 to 20 years, the rate of NICU admissions, newborn intensive care unit admissions, according to the CDC, which doesn't do everything right, but sometimes their numbers are pretty good, has almost doubled from a little over 5% to just under 10%. Tell me that we really believe that 9.8% of babies in America should end up in the newborn intensive care unit. But it's a cash cow.
Yeah.
Now, they're not going to admit that, but if suddenly you paid less money for these things and more for non-interventions, Or you paid a hospital more per delivery if their C-section rate was below 25%. And if it's above 25%, you pay less per delivery. Now, people say, well, that's coercive. You can't do. Yeah, it is coercive.
Because it's coercive the other way.
Yes.
They're being incentivized to
So
drive you further and further away from a natural
We're
birth,
incentivizing
make
you
more
to
money.
go back and to go backwards toward where things were more normal and trusting more in nature. That small percentage of women that need to be induced, that need a scheduled C-section, we all know that hospitals are great when there's emergencies. You break a leg, you have a heart attack, you want to go to a hospital. But pregnancy is the only thing you go to the hospital for that's a normal physiologic function.
Huh.
Nothing else.
Right. That's interesting.
Yeah, we've created, they did a great job in the last 100 years of medicalizing birth, taking it away from midwives and naturopaths and homeopaths and making it seem like it was a medical condition. They took it over, they took over the medical schools, they pharmaceuticalized it, if that's a word. We're writing prescriptions for things, they're using drugs and meds, as opposed to trusting nature's design, intervening, doing preventative care, intervening when it's necessary, trying to talk about nutrition. Listen, prenatal visits in the obstetrical world are averaging 6, 7, 8 minutes long. You cannot give someone the same care as if you give them 30 minutes or an hour.
It's amazing. I mean,
And midwives do that.
Our midwife meetings were usually
at least an hour
45
long.
minutes an
Yeah,
hour.
I know your midwife, and I know that she can talk. So
Yeah.
yes, but then you get to know the couple, and by the way, then the couple feels more confident, and the husband often has this thing where they feel very insecure because their job is to keep their family safe.
Yeah.
And all they know is what they see on TV or whatever about the fear-based obstetrical model, and pregnancy is this scary thing. When you have time and when men show up with their partner to these prenatal visits and in labor, the men have a stronger bond with their woman, the excitement, the respect that you feel for your wife.
Yeah.
If you stand up for her, then she respects you.
Yeah.
If you know that her birth plan is to say, not get an epidural or not have a vaginal exam, and you're standing there while they're doing a vaginal exam on her and you're not saying anything,
Yeah.
your wife is going to look at you a little bit differently. When you stand up for her, she's going to love you even that much more. And a man who's present when his wife goes through that and catches his own baby, or is there present when their baby is born, is going to be a better father, a better husband, more likely to stay in the marriage. I don't need a study to tell me that.
Yeah.
I know people will say, oh, how do you know that? There are some things that you don't need studies for.
What was this transition like for you? First of all, when you were in medical school, did it teach differently than it teaches now?
I don't know because I haven't been to medical school in a really long time. But yes, I think it's still very pharmaceutical based. Listen, I didn't come out of my residency, my medical school and residency, thinking like I do now.
Yeah.
That was, that the backstory is pretty long and not something that I would ever expect to be here sitting on your stage today doing this. But medical schools, they teach very much textbook stuff. They're very pharmaceutical based. Remember, who is the largest benefactor for medical schools? Say it. Pharmaceutical.
Pharmaceutical, yeah.
Yeah,
I feel
pharmaceutical
like they're
company.
funding the textbooks and everything.
Right.
It's all.
Yeah.
I mean, I
this.
think we're all starting to believe doctors are more and more just becoming drug pushers.
Yeah.
Everything's got a drug. Everything needs a drug. Drugs need other drugs to make that drug work better or not give us the side effects. So it's a whole
And it's easier to write a
mess.
prescription than it is to spend time talking about why you don't need one.
How often do young doctors look you up or come to you and say, I'm interested in
Good
what
question.
you're doing?
Very rarely, but there are some. I wondered, how do good people, because good people go to medical school. There's no question that people who want to help people. How do they come out and end up being somebody that stands in the operating room coercing a woman into something she doesn't want, or doing a vaginal exam, or rolling his eyes or her eyes at the woman because she doesn't want to do this or that test or whatever else, or stomping out of the room and labeling the patient non-compliant? How does a good person become that person?
Yeah.
And part of me believes that they get beaten down by the system, and part of me believes that medical schools are now looking for people who are more sheep than shepherd.
Yeah.
When I came out in practice, now I'm starting to sound like my dad, but when I came out in practice, doctors usually just hung up their shingle and built a practice from nothing. And we were our own bosses.
Yeah.
And yes, we had to be licensed, and yes, we had to be privileged at the hospital, but our patients were our patients. Somewhere in the late 80s and 90s, the medical cartel figured out that that's not a good business model for them, that we need to control the patient lives. So let's get the patients, and then we'll hire the doctors. So the doctors suddenly became employees, salaried, working a shift. You don't care the same, and you don't get the same continuity of care, and you don't get the same satisfaction.
You also have a new set of rules, right? Based on legalities, as your own, having your own clinic or your own practice, you decide what you're seeing as your results, what gives me better results. But if you're working for somebody, they're like, it's mathematically proven, it's like a baseball game, right? That the algorithms that you said, put on the monitor, there's this one,
the analytics.
Right? The analytics of it. And so it just becomes, what you have to do, isn't it? Don't you have to go through these procedures? Or your boss is going to say, you're putting us at risk. Not probably telling you you're putting us at risk, not telling you we're not making as much money.
I'll give you a perfect example. Kaiser Permanente in Southern California.
Yeah.
I know them well because I spent 40 years there. They pretty much, I think they still have a rule that don't let people go past 41 weeks.
Right.
Now, 40 weeks is considered the middle of a bell-shaped curve, and 41 weeks is perfectly fine for some women, and some women it's not. But for the most part, it's not a magic number.
Yeah.
Now, doctors that work for Kaiser have to know that making a woman deliver by 41 weeks isn't the only option. Yet, they have to tell women it's the only option.
Right.
They have to skew their counseling to get the woman to deliver before 41 weeks, because if they don't, they're going to get yelled at by somebody in their department. That's what's crazy about the whole thing. They work on an algorithm because they think it protects them legally. And I don't know, I'm not an actuary, I'm not a risk management lawyer or a hospital worker, so I don't know if it's true or not, but it doesn't seem to matter that their outcomes are getting worse and worse.
Right.
They're more concerned about keeping their doors open. And I understand the fiduciary duty of the chief financial officer of a hospital is not to the woman in labor.
Right.
His fiduciary duty is to keep the hospital doors open. And how do you do that? Don't get sued, make a lot of money.
Yeah.
That's how you do it. Well, if
And they've intertwined the two. You make more money by doing all the tests and stuff that keeps you from being sued. You say, hey, we tested for everything. It wasn't missed for lack of, investigation or whatever issue there was.
Yeah, one of my pet peeves is the overuse of ultrasound and technology.
What do you think ultrasound does for someone? What is your beef with it?
Well, okay, so ultrasound is not tested, by the way, for safety.
Oh, shocker.
So we have
Sure, my audience.
we have no idea about the non-ionizing radiation of ultrasound. We do know that it does do things to cells in petri dishes and stuff, but they haven't done human testing, I believe, since the late 80s in China is the last time they've done it. And the machines have gotten more powerful.
Yeah.
We also know that 3D ultrasound and color flow Doppler ultrasound are higher intensity non-ionizing radiation. There's certainly a use for ultrasound. Should it be automatic and algorithmic, and should every woman have this many ultrasounds? Absolutely not. But the system will do that. They'll want you to have a first trimester ultrasound. They'll want you to have one maybe at 12 weeks. They'll want you to have one at 20 weeks. Then they'll want you to have one early in the third trimester if everything is fine. That's 4 ultrasounds, right? Again, I get to the bottom line of doing 4 ultrasounds, have we improved outcomes?
Right.
No. What has improved? The revenue generation for the maternal fetal medicine profession.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I don't want to impugn every single individual in there, but those people that are listening to me that are getting a little knot in their stomach because I'm upsetting them, that little cognitive dissonance that's setting in, think about what you're doing. You're doing all this testing because you've been told that it's the right thing to do and do these tests on these women. But are you improving their outcomes, or are you just getting a live baby in the bassinet? And then whatever happens to that baby and that mom downstream and that mom's future babies isn't your concern anymore.
How much of it is the dot? You talked about the mother's fear. Something I'm starting to question. Like I'm trying to hold on to some remaining ounce of empathy for doctors, or understanding of why they seem to be so close-minded. Like all the things that you've said. And I was recently hanging with a friend of mine, old friend from high school. I hadn't seen him in years and years and years. Hospitalist, works in a hospital. We obviously don't see things exactly the same, but I really tried to have an honest conversation. One of the things he talked about is death, that he has to deal with death all the time. He's got to walk people through, you're going to have to take your loved one off of life support. And that conversation, try to do it in a nice way. But as he was talking about it, he's like, it's really hard, Del. It's really hard to, I have to be there for people emotionally. It sucks the life out of me.
Yeah,
Like, he's just being really honest about it. But is there something about that I'm not thinking about as a layperson, that, you see on occasion a baby's going to be stillborn. On occasion, mom, whatever. You see death around you. Does it have a natural thing where it makes you more cold and calculated because in order just to protect your own emotional space that you can't handle it? Like, I guess I'm trying to understand what that part of it, we watch it on television, the big heroes, the TV show Saving Lives, but when we lose lives, that's something I don't have to deal with on a daily basis, or at least on a yearly basis, or really almost ever, except for some people that are close to me that I lose in a life. What is it in medicine? Is that a trigger point to make it easier for the legal and all the testing and all the studies to just push it away from my own psyche?
I think those people in administration and risk management think that way. I think the individual physician is handcuffed because the individual physician is a human person.
Yeah.
And they'd like to be able to feel grief and emotion because when they lose a patient, for me, when we lose a baby, all right, it's devastating.
Yeah.
In the model that I practiced over the last half of my career with midwives, I was allowed to express my sadness and I was allowed to express my sorrow to the family and that sort of thing. What happens in the medical model, because doctors are essentially employees now, is that the hospital then controls the situation. They circle the wagons and they shut down the communication. And they couldn't be doing something that's worse.
Right.
Because all parents want to know is what happened.
And you cared.
And when you start to fudge it or shut up, it only makes people angry. And it's devastating. And you're doing it at a time where they're suffering, a catastrophic loss, and now you're shutting down and you're not communicating with them. And I think, again, anytime you get a big system, Del, it becomes cold. Try calling customer service at any large company, and you're going to get somebody in a foreign country who really can't help you, but is there to placate you to a little bit, but you're not going to be satisfied with that. Try talking, and sometimes you can't even get a human being. And the hospitals are the same way, because what happens when there's a bad outcome in the hospital then shuts down. It closes its gates. And so the only way that a family can find out what happened sometimes is to hire a lawyer. And that doesn't benefit anybody.
Right.
But they think differently than you and I.
Yeah.
They've lost the humanity. And again, because doctors are no longer in charge of their own patients, doctors don't have the same connection. Doctors are taking care of people in our model. I'm just talking about obstetrics now, not all the other medicine. But even other medicine have hospitalists now. But doctors who take care of pregnant women are catching babies for people they've never met before. And the people that they've seen for 7 months in the office, those babies are being delivered by someone else. They're not seeing the culmination of their work. It can't be very satisfying for them.
Right.
And again, because I just don't believe that they're happy because happy people don't treat people like I described earlier, I just don't understand why more of them are not willing to walk away.
Where do they walk to, though?
Well, they could go into private practice. They could get rid of, they're going to take.
But then they take on but they take a financial.
Oh, they're going to take a financial.
They take on all the risks now. Now the legal issues are theirs. The insurance, getting the insurance paying.
We in the home birth world, we didn't have malpractice insurance, and we did fine because we have relationships.
Yeah.
And I understand that that's going to freak a lot of people out because, again, when you've only lived in one paradigm all your life, the idea that you could do something different is very frightening to people. It's a little bit of the mass formation thing that Matthias Desmond, I think you had him on one time, talked about, where you want to be part of the collective, and you get angry when people like me or you suggest that maybe there's another way of doing it. And I think they'd be a whole lot happier. They might not be as busy. They might make less money, but the satisfaction will be better. And I think most people go into medical school, nursing school, midwifery school, not to get really wealthy. Nobody becomes a doctor now to get wealthy, and I can tell you no midwife goes into midwifery school to get wealthy.
Yeah.
They don't. So they go into it because it's a calling.
Yeah.
And somehow the medical system has beaten that out of most of my colleagues who, then they have to defend what they're doing because the cognitive dissonance is so great. No doctor wants to wake up today and say, for 20 years I've done 2,000 unnecessary cesarean sections. I've cut 1,000 unnecessary episiotomies. I've taken babies and clamped and deprived them of their stem cells because I've done immediate cord clamping. Nobody wants to wake up and say that. So
what's it gonna take? Because I think where the conversation's getting interesting for the HighWire and the work that we've done is, we have this audience out there that is waking up to, I want to have a different world. I want to have a different medical system. I want to have, but we only really have one medical system. And it's all this giant corporate behemoth that during COVID, COVID was a huge wake-up. My audience is 100 times the size because of it.
You've done such great work, and your documentaries have just changed the lives of so many people, right?
Yeah, but what do we do now? I mean, is the only way forward is to build new systems if you're a doctor, you say, I love what Dr. Stu is saying. Is there any future where the hospitals fix what they're doing, that they actually go back in time?
I hate to be so blunt. No.
No way.
Not the way, no, it's not going to change. The doctors that run the system right now, not the doctors that run the system, the businessmen that run the system,
Yes.
the
business model's
lawyers,
working.
the business
making
model.
tons of money.
Correct. They're not going to give it up. Tyrants never surrender. They never say, you know what, we've been wrong for 40 years. We're
Right.
sorry, we're leaving. No,
Right.
they don't do that. So they're not going to give up. And here's where I'm a little concerned, because I'm hoping that when the MAHA movement moves on to the next level, because we're worried about health in children, and that seems to be Bobby's biggest focus right now, which I agree with him 100%.
Yeah.
But our immune health begins actually prior to conception and certainly begins in the womb. And when we start to look at how are we going to change the system, it's going to have to come from bigger people than you and me. But the mistake that's going to be made is when they decide to change obstetrics, who are they going to go to?
Yeah.
They're going to go to the American College of OB-GYN or the Society of Maternal Fetal Medicine.
Right.
They're the people that got us here.
Right.
You remember when the banks crashed in 2008, 2009?
Yeah.
The people that made banks give bad loans was the finance committee. Who led it? Barney Frank and Chris Dodd. When the crash, and they were going to decide, now we're going to fix it, we're going to regulate it, who'd they put in charge? Barney Frank and Chris Dodd.
Right.
Right. I don't want to see Bobby Kennedy make the same mistake of saying, we're going to solve this by bringing in all the brains of
Right.
academic medicine. That's an oxymoron, because they got us into a position with all the numbers I said earlier about how bad we're doing. So yes, they could have a seat at the table, but they shouldn't be the only ones at the table. You need to bring in traditional midwives. You need to bring in doulas who haven't been medicalized. You need to bring in people like me, not necessarily looking for it, but saying there are other doctors out there
Yeah.
who think differently and who try to work within the system because that's all they know, or that they feel more comfortable with the securities that you talked about, with the salary and the malpractice insurance and all that stuff. So, but they do think differently.
Yeah.
And bring those people in to come up with a better way of returning birth to the idea that nature had a purpose in its design. And if we just remember that, and we try to honor that, and we try to nurture that most of the time we're going to be doing great. And those times where we need the hospital, yeah, that would be great. And I'm not saying we should only put 20% of women in the hospital, because the hospitals will go bankrupt with that. But what I'm saying is, if we do it that way, then what we're going to see is a return to nature's design. And could we be doing worse than we're doing right now? And if we don't change it, it's only going to get worse. You think the C-section will stop at 35%?
Right.
No, I mean, South Africa, Brazil, Armenia, 70, 80% C-section rate.
Wow.
What is that doing to that generation of children and the next generation of children who have children? Will they lose the ability to go into labor naturally?
Sure.
Will their microbiomes be affected? Is this the master plan? Is there a big plan to keep us all unhealthy? I don't know, but you couldn't be doing it better if that's your plan.
It's what I struggle with. I tell everyone in this audience right now, I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I can't say that these things are, are purposely designed to kill you. It does appear that they're very good at killing you, but I have not found the email or the piece of evidence that there's intention here.
Yeah.
I mean, you got to read between the lines, I guess. I want to get off the record. I want to talk about, after the show, we'll talk about what you would really like Bobby Kennedy to do. So let's get into that. To finish up here, though, for young women out there and young men that are, maybe getting pregnant or about to be pregnant or are looking to give birth, what should they be thinking now in this world that they're looking at? What are they going to have to do? Because I think once you're in that system, that fear starts, the fear porn, if you will, and it's just really hard to get out of it. What would you recommend to, a young woman that's considering maybe is pregnant right now? What should she think about where she's living and how to have her baby?
Long before she's pregnant, there's a line in the Batman movie where it says, "You always fear what you don't understand." Yeah. So, what I would like to see happen is there's an organization called Girls Who Know, and people can look them up. But I would like to see education in junior high and high school for young girls and boys about the normalcy of our bodies and about the menstrual cycle, and make it something that's physiologically, that they understand it, so that they don't think that going on birth control pills is a good thing off the bat, and they don't get on these hormonal kicks and stuff like that, and they don't think it's gross, and they don't think it's it's shameful or anything like that, so that they understand that this is how your body works. Your body is designed to do this every month, to create an egg, to create a lining of the uterus, to do these things right, that this is natural, that having your periods is natural. And if we get healthier kids, then we're going to get back to where we see less dysfunctional menstrual cycles and stuff. Once we do that, then we can also educate those children at that level on what normal birth is like.
Yeah.
So that when they do finally decide to get in a relationship where they're going to have a baby, they can do a couple things. Before they even get pregnant, check out your community. You decide you're living in Austin, so go check out the hospitals in Austin. Go to labor and delivery, speak to the nurses there, talk to some of the people, somebody on the board of directors, find out what your hospital's C-section rate is. Do they support VBAC? Do they support breech delivery? What's it like at your hospital? And if that's not a good one, maybe you have to go over into another town and try to check out another hospital. Don't be trapped by your insurance card in your local hospital. First time you get pregnant and you go to see an OB, don't go in as a patient. Don't let that hierarchy exist. Go in as an interested consumer. Talk to your doctor as if you're interviewing somebody to be your new nanny for your baby.
Yeah.
You're not necessarily going to hire them. And you don't want to sign forms when you go there. You don't want to have blood drawn. You don't want them to take your blood pressure. Just go in.
I haven't chosen you yet. I'm
and
not
ask
giving you
questions like,
yet. Right.
If I'm in labor, what's the chance you're going to be on call? If my waters break and I'm not contracting, what do you do? And then, you need to come to the hospital right away, or if your fluid's clear and your baby's fine, go back to bed. Ask those questions. What if my baby's breech at term? What do? You don't do breech? Why not? Just simple questions like that. What happens if I decide to decline the diabetes screen? How do you feel about that?
Yeah.
What do you feel about antibiotics if I'm positive for group B strep? Ask these questions and see if you resonate. Make sure your partner's with you. Do not go in alone. Make sure your partner's with you. See how they resonate. See if the person gives you.
That's a good point, because look, you may get along with the doctor, but the doctor and your husband aren't getting along. Like, there's just a weird energy. Just some people rub each other the wrong way.
And
that's not going to be a good scenario.
Like we said earlier, the husband is really an integral part of this whole process.
I can honestly say my wife delivered, naturally, and man, whatever drugs happening there naturally, it's amazing what's going on there to make that happen.
You trusted the midwife because I
did
meet her.
Yes, absolutely.
And And if you go in there and you leave the office feeling comfortable, that's a good sign. If you go in there and leave the office feeling more anxious than when you came in, then don't go back.
Right.
How do they look you in the eye? Are they typing into their little EMR while they're talking to you? Do they make eye contact, or do they have one foot in the door?
Yeah.
Do
What if they
dismiss
want to
your
move into the
concerns?
midwife world or into a natural childbirth, like a home birth? What's the best way to begin that investigation?
Okay. So even if you're planning a hospital birth, I would also suggest to everybody who's listening, try to have at least a few prenatal visits with a home birth midwife.
Okay.
You just pay out of pocket, $150, $200, whatever it costs, to have them come. They'll come to your house. You'll spend an hour and a half with you, 2 hours, whatever your visits were, and you'll get a sense of, I'm not saying that you want to switch to them, I'm saying this will help make you calmer so that your hospital birth is more likely to
They're
be
giving
successful.
you that education you didn't
and
get at
you
junior
know
high.
what what to ask for in the hospital.
Great advice.
And then hire a doula, of course. If you want to look for, again, I think doulas are great, especially for first-time moms. But again, be very careful about doulas and midwives who are sort of becoming medicalized. There's a push by the medical cartel to take over the midwifery and doula profession too. They want to license them, they want to control them, they want to hire them. Can you imagine hospitals want to hire a doula, Del, so that they can supply you a doula when you're in labor? It sounds wonderful, but who does the doula work for?
Right.
Doesn't work for you. There's a conflict
Really
of
good
interest there.
point.
So if you're looking for a home birth midwife, you can just check that out on Google or Facebook or whatever else. You might know somebody that had a home birth, and there are other, you might know a midwife like who has a podcast, and you might write to them and say, do you know anybody in Boston who's a good midwife? And they may say, I don't, but I know somebody who might, and we have a really good network of people because we all love what we do in that. I don't want to call it the alternative birth world because it shouldn't be the alternative. It used to be the norm, and they took the word and they've changed the language and they made us the outcast. The midwives are labeled mid-level providers. Doctors are providers, which I hate that term too because, you're the guy that makes your sandwich is a provider. We're physicians. Yeah. They're midwives. But insurance companies changed the language because they wanted to minimize that doctor-patient relationship. There's a lot of psychology involved in all of this.
Yeah.
But you can find a midwife in your local community. And by the way, if you can't, you might want to consider relocating for the birth of your baby. Many clients moved to Los Angeles in the last month of their pregnancy so they could have me. They had a breech delivery. They were living in Oregon, and they were living in, Colorado, and they had twins, and the only option they were given was a section at 36 weeks, and they didn't want that, and so we would meet online, and midwives will do that. They'll meet with you online, and then if you like them, then you can relocate at 36 weeks. Not everybody, obviously, people can't afford that.
Right.
There are other barriers that come into play, but you can ask the question, don't be stuck by your insurance card and to go only because that person has been doing your pap smear for the last 10 years. That is to put more effort into your birth.
If there was one thing that when someone's with their doctor that you would say that's a red flag, if they're telling you that that's a red flag, you shouldn't be listening to that. Is there anything that's happening there that you would say is be careful?
Yeah, if their tendency is to dismiss your questions or not give you the time to answer your questions or make you feel small, that would be, by the way, that would be in any profession. Anybody, any car dealer who made me feel that way, I wouldn't come back to them.
Is there any car dealer that doesn't? I think that's the entire profession.
But I'm saying,
so I don't want a car dealer as my doctor, is what you're saying.
Yeah, you want a doctor that feels like they know. Does a doctor remember your name?
Yeah.
When you come in, when he comes in to see you or she comes in to see you, does she remember what you talked about last time? I mean, they usually write notes. It takes them 10 seconds outside the door to read the notes so they could remember. Does the doctor even bother to do that?
Right.
And I think most of us have a sixth sense about who we want to spend time with and who we don't.
Yeah.
And is this a person you want to spend time with? Don't just like them because they happen to have lots of credentials behind their name and because they work at Johns Hopkins. That doesn't make them a good physician. all the stupid stuff that we've talked about over the last half hour or so has been put in place by board certified fellows of the American College of OB-GYN doctors. So that doesn't, just because you have all these titles doesn't make you somebody who you necessarily want to hire.
Yeah. That's good advice. You should like them. You should want them in the room. It's a pretty personal experience.
It's the most personal experience. It's the most powerful experience. It's something you'll remember till the day that you die. And the sad thing, Del, is if you talk to a lot of women, and England and Australia recently did studies where they looked at birth trauma. And they found that 40-some% of women said that they felt traumatized in birth. And I think it's probably double that. I think that birth trauma wasn't well defined. I think somebody spoken to harshly is probably not considered trauma by people doing the studies. Trauma is like having a vaginal exam unwanted, or having a episiotomy, or being forced into a C-section. That's traumatic, but also it's traumatic to just be dismissed, or not talked to. And why should it be 40%? Why? That's a crazy number of women who feel bad about their birth.
Yeah.
Every woman loves her baby, but a large percentage of women are not happy about the way the baby came into the world.
It's terrible.
And I know that you and Lee had this wonderful experience. And not all home births go beautifully either. But if you start with a home birth and end up with a C-section, you are very likely to know that that C-section was necessary.
Yeah.
If you go to the hospital for your birth and end up with a C-section, there's a damn good chance that that C-section was iatrogenic.
Absolutely. Well, you're a gift to this planet. It's great knowing you're out there. I know you were a lifesaver for Jen when she was going through breech birth. No one was giving any options,
It's a funny story.
It is a funny story. I just remember when she said, because we had a home birth, she was asking about it, and she's planning on a hospital, and then she's like, the baby's breech, so that's making me feel like I have to do this at home. And I was like, I thought that was the reverse of what I expected, Yeah,
well, fortunately, she had a midwife team at the hospital, and the midwife suggested me, and I met her one time.
Yeah.
And then, like, a couple days later, she went to labor.
Yeah.
And so she didn't even get to meet the team. I got my friends Beth and Bliss to come, and she delivered I remember her birth on the bed. For that, they would have sectioned her.
Yeah.
And would baby have been fine? Probably.
Yeah.
Would baby's microbiome have been fine? Probably. Maybe not. Would Jen's experience have been the same? No.
Yeah.
Would baby have had skin to skin immediately and delayed cord clamping and all that stuff? No. Not at a C-section, not at one of the local hospitals in LA. No. So her daughter got a better start in the world because I was fortunate enough to train at a program where breech and twins were just considered a variation of normal. And of course, that was in the early 80s. And since that time, those skills have been essentially eliminated. And now 98% of breeches in the United States and 75% of twins in the United States are born by C-section. And I've even published papers. My papers don't reach statistical significance. They're basically my cases.
Yeah.
But we have success rates in the high 90s.
Wow.
With both breech and twins. And this is in the home setting.
Well,
and I think that births will be more likely to be successful in the home setting simply because you don't mess with Mother Nature's design so much.
Well, I want to get into details how we're going to fix this system. We got Robert Kennedy Jr. Up there at HHS and some great people around him. Marty McCary is doing great stuff at FDA.
Yes.
Dr. Oz is a great guy. I'm sure he'd be fascinated by this conversation too. So why don't we have an off the record and get into those details. I want to just thank you for the work that you've done. Thank you for joining us today on the HighWire. It's really amazing.
Del, thanks for the opportunity.
Right. Very good.
Thanks.